Let's talk about Rick Perry. It's do or die for Rick Perry, it would seem to me. Any sense he's making any inroads as you walk around Columbia, South Carolina?
You know, not really. Most of his events have been 40, 50, 60 people. He's doing it in a very retail way. You're not seeing much or any really of him on television. He's been doing some ads. He has one long ad that's pitching himself as really the only kind of military person with military background in the race, even though Ron Paul also has a military background. But he's trying to appeal to the South Carolina military contingent, of which there's quite a few down along the coast in particular. But you don't get the feeling that if anybody's going to catch fire here, it's going to be Rick Perry.
That's interesting because he really did stay out of the New Hampshire race. And now we were thinking, oh, yes, he's really going to get his act together and really make a big push. But you're saying no.
Well, that's certainly not the feeling. And, you know, he's really gone very strongly in on this whole attack Boehner, attack Romney. And it's just, generally speaking, I think it's fair to say that you don't pick up a lot of support by attacking other people. You may be able to erode their support somehow, but, you know, he's having to work the state and get people to see him as the preferred candidate. And there's not really yet a lot of sign that that's happening. He's not, you know, we need some polling. It's been a while since we've had some good polling, but so far the sense is not that if anybody's going to gain latitude or altitude, I should say, it's not necessarily going to be him. I think it's more likely to be either Rick Santorum or Newt Gingrich.
Okay, now let's talk about Ron Paul. Is he continuing that momentum? Is he going to continue that momentum that he got in New Hampshire?
I think he'll gain a lot from what he had in 2008. You know, in 2008 here, he had a little over 3%. In New Hampshire, he way more than doubled his vote count from last time. But there's a natural constituency for Ron Paul in New Hampshire that's a little bit harder to identify here. I'm not sure that he's likely to do as well as he did in the first two states, which is to say he got close to a quarter of the vote in the first two states. I don't see him doing anything like that here.
Okay. Now, he has two great things that should appeal, certainly in my mind. One, he is from the South. He's from Texas. And the other is he does have that military record. Do you think those will be things that he'll be emphasizing over the next few days?
You know, I think he will be emphasizing what he has emphasized really for decades, which is just the classic Ron Paul line on, you know, end the Fed, dramatically reduce the size of government, get out of our involvements overseas, end the war in Afghanistan. I mean, that's very strongly his message, and it's worked for him well in a lot of these other places. I don't see him necessarily trying to play up his Southern roots or necessarily even his military background, though he may in advertising.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Well, talking of advertising, very interesting, actually quite a funny attack ad against Mitt Romney going out at the moment called The French Connection. Let's take a look at this.
What has Massachusetts given us? A liberal governor who wanted us to believe he is strong on defense. A liberal senator who wanted us to believe he was a man of the people. And a Massachusetts moderate who runs away from Ronald Reagan.
Look, I was an independent during the time of Reagan-Bush. I'm not trying to return to Reagan-Bush.
Romney donated to Democrats, and given the choice to vote in the Democrat or Republican primary, Romney chose the Democrats, voting for a liberal Democrat instead of President George H.W. Bush. Romney opposed the contract with America, raised taxes, and authored government-mandated health care with taxpayer-funded abortions. But now he tells us, trust me, I'm a conservative. Massachusetts moderate Mitt Romney, he'll say anything to win. Anything. And just like John Kerry,
laissez les bon temps rouler.
He speaks French too.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Mitt Romney.
But he's still a Massachusetts moderate, and a Massachusetts moderate cannot beat Barack Obama.
Okay, Neil, I don't know if you managed to hear that, but the comment on the end, and he speaks French too. That was from Newt Gingrich's campaign. Do you think that's going to work for Newt Gingrich, basically accusing Romney of being a French-speaking moderate?
I think I have not seen that ad yet, and it's interesting. It was fairly long. Was that like a minute? I guess.
Yeah, that was 1 minute long. Yes.
Yeah, that was interesting. It was certainly effective. I could see how that kind of thing would have real resonance here. You know, all those things were true, particularly about his voting record and how he used to be a much different politician in the 90s. The French thing is funny. I don't know whether it'll necessarily play against him. But, there was a liberal political group that did a whole online riff about the French thing a few weeks ago. It'll be interesting to see if more people go after that. But it's that sounded to me like a particularly effective and funny ad.
Yeah, I think funny seems to work very well, especially on web, things that go around the web. Now, Gingrich, is he making any inroads in South Carolina, in Columbia? What are people saying about him?
Well, I mean, he's certainly campaigning aggressively. He's all over the place. Today, he happens to be, at least this morning, down in Florida opening up his campaign headquarters, but he'll be back up. He's the guy has plenty of energy, and at least in the most recent poll we have, he's the only one that's coming close to Romney right now. He was very strong here in months past when he had his big boom. I guess the big question is going to be, can you have a sort of second coming in the polls? And so far we haven't seen that voters in other states are willing to love the guy, fall out of love, and then fall back in love with anybody. So that's going to be his challenge.